Have you ever wondered what lies behind Christian festivals that sometimes even insiders do not fully grasp? Get ready to broaden your horizons, because today we will explore one of the most special and complex events in the Christian tradition, namely the Corpus Christi feast, a grand celebration that has spanned many centuries but whose origin and true meaning still remain hidden to many. The story of Corpus Christi is not merely anecdotes or orally transmitted traditions, but is also closely tied to deeply ingrained memories in church history, spiritual revelations, and even interwoven miraculous imprints recorded in the Bible. This event took place around the year 1263 in a European context teeming with intense religious beliefs. There was a priest named Pharaoh, originally from Prague, which at that time belonged to northern Italy. He bore a heavy spiritual concern regarding faith in the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. In the Bible, Jesus once affirmed through the words written in John 6:51-58 about the bread of life and the Eucharistic mystery. Yet this very priest had to wrestle with the question, is the Lord truly mysteriously present in that small piece of bread? The spiritual struggle grew stronger, prompting Father Pharaoh to embark on a pilgrimage to Rome, the center of the Catholic faith, where the tombs of St. Peter and St. Paul lie. In the old days, traveling to Rome in pilgrimage was a cherished wish of many believers, because they believed this land was filled with divine grace, capable of healing one's faith-related anxieties. On the way, Father Pharaoh stopped in a small town called Bolsena. This town sits beside a large lake and is famously devoted to Saint Christina, a virgin martyr from the 3rd or 4th century. The life of Saint Christina was like a bloody yet deeply sacred epic. She was born into a pagan family, then resolutely followed Christianity, inciting her father's furious wrath. The father abused his power, trying to force his daughter to renounce her faith. All the beatings and tortures did not make Christina deny the Lord. Similar to the story in the Bible of the 3 young men in the book of Daniel who steadfastly refused to worship pagan idols, Dan 3:16-18, it shows that loyalty to one's faith can lead to fiery ordeals. For Saint Christina, the climax was her being tied to a heavy rock and thrown into Lake Bolsena, presumably to drown. But a miracle occurred. The rock, which seemed like a burden dragging her to death, instead floated to the surface. This image brings to mind the story of Jesus walking on the water, Mount 14:25-27, a strong reminder that God's power transcends ordinary laws. When Saint Christina stood on that floating rock, her footprints were permanently imprinted. From then on, the relic bearing those footprints was preserved and venerated as a living testament to the intervention of the Most High. Many pilgrims from far and wide came to Bolsena to see those miraculous footprints in Saint Christina's tomb, praying for protection and healing. That setting gave Father Pharaoh hope. If Saint Christina could be sustained amidst a sea of suffering, perhaps his own faith, though filled with doubt, might also be consoled. So one day he decided to celebrate Mass in that town, imploring Saint Christina's intercession for him to soon regain the conviction that Jesus truly dwells in the sacred host. At the moment of consecration, when Father Pharaoh raised the host, a shocking event took place. The host began to bleed, with crimson drops of blood falling onto the priest's hands and then onto the altar cloth, commonly called the corporal. This occurrence gave everyone goosebumps and moved them to tears. As for Father Pharaoh, it was like an unexpected spiritual encounter. He, who had doubted the real presence of the Lord in the Eucharist, no longer doubted. Instead, he felt astonishment mixed with indescribable joy. He tried to regain his composure, placing the bleeding host on the altar and shedding unstoppable tears. His legs seemed to lose control, only wanting to quickly report the news to church authorities. On the stone floor and the steps leading to the sanctuary, the bloodstains remained indelible, becoming concrete evidence of what many believers have venerated as a Eucharistic miracle. When the news spread, people flocked in. Other priests also came to witness, all stunned by the bloodstains on the corporal and on the floor. An urgent sense arose, how to immediately inform the Pope. Fortunately, Pope Urban IV was then in Orvieto near Bolsena, so Father Pharaoh decided to travel the short distance to present the blood-stained corporal to the Pope and recount all the happenings. At that time, Pope Urban IV was so moved that he fell silent, for he recalled a vision revealed to Saint Juliana of Liege not long before. Juliana, a nun living in the early 13th century, experienced many spiritual visions, in which she saw a radiant full moon partially obscured by a dark corner, a symbol that the Church lacked a specific feast to honor the Eucharist. Anyone who has read the New Testament surely knows that the Eucharist was instituted at the Last Supper, Mount 26:26-28, and 14:22-24, Elk 22:19-20, 1 Cor 11:23-26. But Holy Thursday cannot purely celebrate the joy of the Eucharist, because it is intertwined with the sorrow of Jesus' passion. In her revelations, Juliana perceived that God desired a jubilant feast dedicated solely to venerating the Eucharist as the source of life that nourishes faith. However, she was afraid to disclose it for 20 years, until she met a priest named Jacques Pantaleon. This priest fully believed in what she shared and supported presenting it to the Church. But then Juliana died, and the message she left behind seemed forgotten. Ironically, that very Jacques Pantaleon later became Pope Urban IV. Thus, when he heard Father Ferro from Bolsena bring news of the Eucharistic miracle, Pope Urban IV immediately connected it to God's will through Juliana's past revelations. He realized that this event was a powerful demonstration, as though God wanted to place his seal, confirming that the Lord truly dwells in the Eucharist. To clarify further, Pope Urban IV dispatched an investigative team of learned theologians, which included St. Thomas Aquinas and St. Bonaventure, great minds of the Middle Ages. They went to Bolsena to examine the blood-stained corporal, gather testimonies from those present at that fateful Mass, and even inspect the remaining bloodstains on the steps. The rigorous investigation confirmed there was no deceit or external intervention. All evidence pointed to a divine intervention. After finishing, the delegation prepared to depart Bolsena, bringing the relic, the blood-stained corporal, back to Orvieto. The local faithful, filled with devotion, followed. The procession grew, stretching for kilometers in a religious parade toward Orvieto, where Pope Urban IV was waiting. When the Pope heard they were close, he and many dignitaries of the papal court personally went out to the bridge leading into the city to receive the relic. The image of the Pope prostrating in veneration before the bleeding host amid the murmured prayers was a deeply moving moment. Considered the first public Eucharistic procession, marking the establishment of the tradition of the open-air Eucharistic procession in the Corpus Christi feast. Having verified all evidence and reminded by St. Juliana's revelations, Pope Urban IV in 1264 issued the decree Transitoris, officially instituting Corpus Christi to emphasize belief in the body and blood of Jesus. This move also counteracted the wave of heresy at that time, which denied or doubted the doctrine of the real presence in the Eucharistic bread. For Corpus Christi not to be just a monotonous ceremony, Pope Urban IV wanted a radiant and deeply spiritual liturgy. He tasked the eminent theologians of that period with composing fitting texts and hymns. On this occasion, St. Thomas Aquinas wrote many poetic works, most famously the hymn Lauda Sion, which praises faith in the real presence of the Lord in the Eucharist, as well as expressing the worship of Him who sacrificed himself to nourish humanity. According to legend, when St. Thomas read Lauda Sion, other scholars, including St. Bonaventure, felt they could not surpass such wondrous words, so they tore up their own compositions, unanimously agreeing that Lauda Sion should be the official hymn for the grand feast. In the first Corpus Christi celebration, the people of Orvieto and surrounding areas flocked in, participating in the Eucharistic procession through the streets, a strong declaration of faith. Thanks to that, Orvieto built a large cathedral, called the Duomo di Orvieto, to house and keep the sacred corporal. Construction of this church began in 1290, featuring an Italian Gothic style with a magnificent facade lavishly decorated. Later, Orvieto became a pilgrimage center for those who wished to view the relic, pray, and renew their faith. Personally, when I read and contemplate the Bolsena event, I recall the biblical verses affirming that faith is the assurance of what we do not see. Heb 11:1. We often say, I do believe, help my unbelief. Mech 9:24. If the Eucharist encapsulates the entire divine universe in a fragile piece of bread, then the miracle at Bolsena is like a window open for those who doubt to touch the mystery. For Christians, it is a driving force for stronger conviction. For anyone not sharing this belief, it remains a story evoking curiosity and admiration for religious resolve that can shift the cultural bedrock of a region. Of course, different denominations in Christianity, Protestant, Orthodox, Anglican, etc., have their own positions on the Eucharist. Some emphasize the commemoration of the Last Supper, but do not celebrate Corpus Christi with processions as Catholics do. Even in the broader world, there are beliefs and religions entirely separate, not believing that Jesus is truly present in the host. Yet, as is commonly asked in the New Testament, we can reflect. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another, 13:35. Despite theological differences, the essential matter is love, tolerance, and mutual respect to build bridges instead of barriers. Upon reflection, I recall once visiting an ancient church. The elderly priest there said, "People sometimes need tangible signs to believe, because our minds easily doubt. But God always grants grace silently. Whether the miracle is visible or invisible, it ultimately draws us nearer to the Lord." That statement etched itself into me, and I think the Eucharistic miracle at Bolsena is a fervent call. Do not let our limited understanding of the Eucharistic mystery hinder us from living our faith fully, for Jesus himself said, "Whoever eats this bread will live forever," 6:58. In the present age, when the world seems to follow skepticism, people often dismiss religious mysteries as fairy tales or exaggerations. However, the historical traces remain. The corporal is preserved, the church in Orvieto still stands tall, Lake Bolsena remains tranquil, and Christians over the centuries have remained attached to belief in the Eucharist. Without even mentioning the Bible or church documents, the mere dedication of millions of people who daily kneel before the tabernacle is in itself a powerful testimony of faith. Corpus Christi, therefore, is not just a commemoration of a 13th century miracle, but also a symbol of ultimate joy, the joy of having the true Lord among us, a foundational element that has carried Catholic faith through many historical tribulations. Someone might ask, if the Church already has daily Mass and commemorates the institution of the Eucharist on Holy Thursday, why do we need another feast? The answer is, Holy Thursday is associated with the Passion, when Jesus entered the Garden of Gethsemane to suffer for humanity. That sorrowful atmosphere does not fully display the jubilant veneration of the Eucharist. Corpus Christi was born as a day of public celebration to honor the grace of the Eucharist, like provisions for the journey that nourish the soul, reminiscent of manna in the desert, Acts 16. From then on, believers were invited to join processions, singing hymns like Tantum Ergo or Lauda Sion, to proclaim, "This is the source of life, bread from heaven. Whoever eats it shall never die." It must be said that Christians view the Eucharist not merely as a symbol or an act of remembrance, but as a holy encounter with the Lord himself. Corpus Christi contributes to deepening reverence for it. At the same time, enlightened by Scripture, this feast reminds us to live in communion, sharing, and charity. If we receive the Lord in the Eucharist, we are also called to break ourselves in service to others, as Jesus taught. "Love one another as I have loved you." 15:12. On the journey of faith, everyone sometimes has doubts or wavers. Perhaps the story of Father Pharaoh in Bolsena and the image of Saint Christina standing on a floating rock in a deep lake remind us that amid innumerable uncertainties, God still upholds those who are sincere. Therefore, no matter where you stand in your faith or spiritual journey, let the divine light and grace guide you. And remember, sometimes doubt itself is the key leading us to spiritual depth. Now I invite you to pause for a moment to reflect. Have you ever experienced a miracle in your life, be it big or small? Are you willing to open your heart to learn more about the spiritual dimension of human existence? If yes, or if you are simply curious, take the next step on your path of discovery. Let the Corpus Christi feast become a catalyst, reminding us that God is always close, attentive, and ready to pour out grace in abundance. In reality, some Christian traditions do not celebrate Corpus Christi because they have different interpretations of the Eucharist or emphasize other aspects of faith. Still, From the viewpoint of the majority of Catholic believers, the glory of the Eucharist deserves solemn celebration. Of course, any religion or belief exalts fear of God, sincerity, mutual respect, and the fostering of love. As St. Paul emphasized in the first letter to the Corinthians, 1 Cor 13:13, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. The diversity of denominations contributes to the rich tapestry of human spiritual life. The core, regardless of differences, is to place love and compassion above all judgments. Because ultimately, God is love, James 4:8, transcending all religious boundaries. That is also the primary reason driving ecumenical efforts and dialogue among churches. Take action today. If you find the story of Bolsena helpful, do not hesitate to share it so more people can learn about the miracle that gave rise to the feast of the body and blood of Christ. Click the subscribe button, turn on notifications to continue accompanying us in the next discoveries. Every like and every comment you make is a catalyst for spreading good news. For me, the journey of discovering Corpus Christi is more than learning about a historical event. It is a meditation on faith, on how people yearn to touch the sacred realm. Just as St. Christina was sustained so as not to sink into the cold waters, each of us can be upheld in adversity as long as we trust and surrender ourselves. Think of your daily pressures, worries about the future, health, and the myriad trials of human life. Perhaps in everything, God is still present in Eucharistic bread as a metaphor. Opportunities, people, and specific deeds that convey life force, love, and peace. If today you are torn between faith and doubt, let the Bolsena story ignite your spiritual thirst, or at least let us respect and appreciate others' faith, for each religion and each believer strives toward truth, goodness, and beauty. Ultimately, peace and compassion are always more valuable than doctrinal disputes. So at this very moment, do not leave with a closed mind. Continue your journey. Click follow, join in discussion, share your thoughts, or recount your faith experiences if you have any. Who knows, your story might become an encouragement to someone who is confused. Remember, Corpus Christi did not end in those historical pages of 1263. It is still alive in every Mass and every loving act. And as Paul emphasized in the letter to the Colossians, Col 3:14, above all these things put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. May we be ever warmed by that flame, so that wherever we go, we sow peace and love, just as St. Christina spread living faith despite the storms of life, and as the Bolsena miracle once again moves every generation, bearing witness to a God who always walks with humankind. Then what are you waiting for? Reach out to the mystery beckoning you. Let faith step out of the pages and become the torch that illuminates your life and the lives of those around you. Click subscribe, turn on notifications, so that together we can discover more marvelous aspects of history, the Bible, and spiritual life, in order to nurture a society rich in compassion, filled with reverence for the Creator, where all recognize each other as brothers and sisters. Wishing you peace, and may God abundantly shower grace upon every step of faith we take.